All right, here we go again. So we're going to continue with what I would call the ultra nerd Star Wars party. Um, Today's topic was actually recommended, or at least suggested, by David Lacour. I thought it was a good topic, actually, just because certainly I can talk about it. That's one, and two, can kind of show you a lot of the examples, and three, just by looking at a few of the other aspects of it, have learned a couple of things that I didn't know. That why not? Let's share them. So it'll be relatively educational for that. So the main topic is going to be factory codes on the cardbacks. You know, what do they mean? Where do they come from? What are some interesting aspects about them? Do they mean more than some of us know? They actually do, and I'll show you a couple things about that. The other thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is just, I talked about the prototypes being shown on the back of some of the Star Wars cards. I'm going to show a little bit about that on the early versions of the Empire cards. Now, of course, as we said before, the 21 back of the ESB cards did not have any of the ESB figures. It was just the first 21. So the first card back to have any of the ESB figures was the 31A. Okay, now the 31A, what distinguishes it is, of course, the three pictures down here. You know, the question is really, is this really a prototype of the Snowspeeder? That something that's not, I don't think it is, just because all the pictures subsequent to this really show a very similar one. So if they were using a prototype for the rest of the time, that I guess that would, fit. But anyways, so the 31st figure here is the Hammerhead that you can see kind of he's the lonesome one. But that was the first one. And then the second one was the 31B. And of course now you can see the prototype of the Hoth playset. And this is probably the picture that makes me laugh the most, is because it has Leia hanging upside down in a sort of more of a prototype shot of the Death Star playset. And then of course this really ominous picture of Vader. But there were no overt factory codes on the card backs themselves of these. Now, the next ones in the series went to the 32 back and the 32 back A. So up here, the Yoda is now placed on here. What they've done is, you can see, let me get that. So compared to the 31A, you can see what they've changed is now they have the Hoth playset instead of the transport. And then, of course, the Falcon and the Snowspeeder are the same. Okay. But again, in the 32A, there was no factory codes, at least that have been shown or that I know about. So it wasn't until the 32B where factory codes started to show up. Okay. And so the reason why I have this arrow here is because there, on some of these 32Bs, there's a little S or a letter that shows up in the chrome border. Now that, like for example, if it were an S, well, the S represents the actual factory. Okay. And so we'll go over a few of those to talk about. Now, it's my wife. Anyways, so, back in the mid-'70s when, Bernie, Loomis, and Kenner got the Kenner license, obviously they needed people to produce the toys. They could build them and create them, but they need somebody to build them. Well, they knew that there was a great factory, the Smile Factory, that did a lot on the $6 Million Man series, and Bernie thought they did a great job. And so that was one of the factories that Bernie signed on to do a lot of the manufacturing of the Star Wars figures was Smile. And actually Smile was once one factory, and then by the time they got to the Empire Strikes Back figures, they were producing so many that they had to build another factory. So they expanded, of course, their production. The two other factories that were also involved were Cater and basically Unifortune or Unitoys. All three of those are Hong Kong. There apparently was 3 Taiwanese factories that I can't figure out what they were. I can't figure out the names of them or anything like that. But each one of those factories started to have codes that started to show up on either the card backs for the 32Bs. If I'm correct, most of the factory codes started showing up on the footers. Now, I don't have any of the footers because I don't collect footers unless they're white. Wink, wink. But you see letters like K on the bottom of the footer, which is, of course, cater. You have S for smile, and then I guess a UL or UI for Unitoys. But anyway, so this is where it started, was in the 32B. So when you get into the next numbered card back, you get into the survival. Now this was, of course, this is the 41. I'm going to put on my eyes here. This was the 41 back. Now, when you look at the card back, what you need to look for is next to Greedo. Greedo has got there. Now you see on this one, there's a little K. And the K, as we said before, it's cater. Okay. And so that's where the sort of the card back, besides the S's that were on the chrome borders of the 32Bs, and the 41s, you can look for the letter that's near Greedo. Okay, so this is a 41A. So the 41Bs, you can see here's a U for Unitoys. Okay, and also you can look at the play sets that were included, especially on the 41C. You see the prototype AT-AT right here. But anyways, if you go, once again, there's a U. Now, I don't have an example of an S, but I know they're there. I've looked all that up. So anyway, so that's where, at least on the 41 backs, they started to show up. So now we went through 41A, B, and C. Now we'll get to 41D. Okay, now it becomes a little bit more obvious. So here's a 41D, and there it is, a giant U. So really in your face in terms of saying where this is a Unitoy, a Hong Kong production. So then on the 41E, you can see the 41E over here. Guess what? It's a K for cater. And so in the ESB line, they were all single letters. Okay. And the Smile factories, again, there was one in Hong Kong, and then they had to expand, and I guess it was in Macau. The other two were in Hong Kong, and again, I don't know about the Taiwanese factories, if they put them on there. I've never seen one, so I don't know the answer to that question. So we'll get rid of those. And of course, the 41Es and Ds, all three factories had produced the card back. So the next one, which is very interesting, is of course the 45A, which is the stand. Now you can see in the lower near the proof of purchase, you have a U for, guess what, Unitoys again. Now this is the very interesting one, is that the other one, it's in a different spot. So the K's on the 40, this is a 45B because it has the extension sticker here, but on all the 45 backs, there are different locations for the factory code. So the K's were down by the barcode up here, and as I told you before, the the ones are typically by the proof of purchase here. So anyways, that's just, again, kind of where they're located. When you get into the 47, so here's an interesting property, is that this is a print, the 47 back for Forlom, this is a printed card back. You can see again the code here for the factory. This is a U. I've got this is an S for Smile. They were produced by all the factories. But it's interesting that all of the print card backs had at least from the 32B on, from the 41s on, had a factory code, but all, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but all the stickers didn't have a factory code. So just an interesting note there. It's again one of those other things that people try to fake, is putting factory codes on stickers which didn't exist. So that was just something interesting. I'm just reading, Jeff, your question. Well, if you look at this is what's always interesting to me. We're going to go back to the 30 back, the 31 backs and the 32 backs. So the 31A and B, that's the 31A, 31A, there's the 31B. So if you look at the vehicles and play sets that were included, this is a 32A and a 31A. They're very similar. The layouts are very similar. Okay, and then of course if you look at the 31B and the 32B, again the same thing. They're very similar, and so I would definitely say these are two distinct waves. But were designed at a very similar time. I mean, so it's very interesting. There are many card backs that are like this, meaning that where the number changes, but the card back really does not. Maybe instead of a prototype, they add a regular production picture or something like that. But it's interesting. The 31, 32Bs match up and the A's match up. So I think they were distinct waves, but they were, like I said, the two different ones were created at the same time, meaning the A's and the B's together, but were released differently. All right. So we're going to go into where things start to change, okay? And that's at the 48s. So the 48 back. So, of course, the first 48 back, 48A, you can see down in the corner by the proof of purchase, you can see this little bitty S here, okay? And so that's very, very interesting. And so that's just where it's at on this. Now, when you go to the 48B, remember it was a sticker. And what we just said is that there's no factory codes on the stickers. And so there's no factory code on this anywhere. Okay, now, of course, if you could lift the sticker up, you'd probably see what it was, at least with respect to the 48. Now, the 48C, which I said it's not a sticker. And so guess what you see? There's a factory code now. Okay, so that must tell us that the stickers that were added onto the card backs, they were either produced in one location and sent out to all the factories and put on the card backs. And of course, a sticker is not a card back, so it wasn't necessarily produced at the factory. But it's interesting to know that. That's just sort of one of those nerdy things. All right, now here is my favorite fun fact of the day. So when they got into the Jedi cards, the factory codes changed. So now they were 2 letters. Okay, so before we had K, U, and S. And now when we get into the Jedi cards, we have many more. We have HN, we have HT, we have HG, we have TJ. And those are all, represent the different factories. So HN is Smile, HT is Unitoys, and then HG is Cater. Again, the Taiwan, the TJs, I don't know what those are. There are some other codes that are out there, a TW, a TC, and I think people think those are for the vehicles. So I've never seen those on card backs. But anyways, this was the most interesting thing, at least for me, that I found out in looking at these. So we have what we call the first Jedi card. Okay, remember no Jedi figures were on this 48 back. But anyways, so it has the 9 num. You see the factory code here. This is an HN. Okay, again, no sticker. And again, 48A. No, that's not what I have. Anyways, 48A, long Star Wars, and then the collect all 48 below it. Okay, and as we said before, there are three versions of this card back. There are the, again, the long line on top, short line on bottom. We have the short Star Wars on top, the long line on bottom, and then of course we have the three lines. Well, so wouldn't you know it, that the 48A has the HN, again here, right there. The 48B, which is the short line up top here, guess what? It is an HT. Okay, and you remember HT is Unitoys. Okay, and then the three line one, you can see, is an HG. Okay, and so that's consistent. And so all three Hong Kong factories produced a different 48A for the Jedi cards. And each one of them, if you know the factory origin, you know what lines are going to be up here. Anyways, that was just kind of an interesting note. And, maybe an explanation on why there are three different card backs. Well, it's because they're from three different factories. Anyways, so that's just kind of an interesting thing to note. Now we move on. Like I said, one of the other things that you'll notice is the color of the actual letters that are associated with the factory codes. And so, so we have the A. Oh, my other A. So these are just two examples. We have an HN here, and then we have an HT, right? The HN is in sort of a light colored blue, and the HT is, of course, white, and you'll see that'll change over time. One of the interesting things is that there's a lot of made in Mexico Return of the Jedi figures. Well, the Mexico factories had no factory codes, and so that's something that's also interesting. The other thing that I don't have that I forgot to mention is that there is an early Jedi 48A that has no factory code on it, but it says could be Hong Kong or Macau on it in the main end. So down here, this says made in Hong Kong, so it can say made in Hong Kong or Macau, and again, there's no factory code here. So that was probably the earliest version of these, and I think it's only on a 48A. Never seen it on a 48B, never seen it on 48C. So just something to look for. That would be a very early card in the 48A production. So, all right. Well, as you move on, you go to a 65B now, and you can see the HN cards now have a green HN label to match the proof of purchase. So anyway, so that was another change, is that now the HN is the only one that's colored. The TJs, the HGs are all white. In fact, you can see this is an example of a TJ right here, okay? And that remained white, even though this proof of purchase changed to green in the later, basically the 77, 79 backs, as well as the 65Ds and some of the 65Bs. All 65Cs are blue. All right. So those are just those. All right. Well, there's a couple of other things that are out there that are very interesting, and I'll show you those that kind of match. Okay, so one thing you can also look for is the tab. Now you can see the tab here, and it's a perforated tab, okay? And so each factory actually had its own style of what do you call it? Hanging tag, or the punch, or whatever you want to punch hole. And so the perforated style, that's from the Smile factory, okay? So that's an HN, or I'm sorry, an HT that you can see, as we said. And then the other one is what's called, what do you call this, a single punch or a dot, where you can see, let me try to get this, you can see most of the wear is right in the middle, and this U at the top is kind of a shallow U. That is supposedly a cater Let me find a better one of that. This is a good one. You can see this. See, it's kind of a shallow U at the top, and there's like one single point. This one's hard to see, but anyways, but that's a Cater hole punch. And then I'll show you the Unitoys hole punch, which is, once you see it, it's very, very obvious. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So again, just to confirm, this is an HT, which is Unitoys, and then now you can see the U at the top is very, it's very tall. And so you have the tall one as opposed to the I stink at this. Anyway, the shallow one. So that can also tell you a little bit about where the basically the origin of production of that card back. So anyways, so that's kind of a very chaotic run through factory codes, but it's interesting because you can see where things kind of change over. You can see, again, changes in the manufacturing and how they denoted things. My favorite fact of the day is the 48As and how there's actually 4 versions of the 48As, but there's 3 different print versions, and each print version came from a different factory. And so that's always something unique that you can actually look up yourself, and it's actually kind of a cool little thing to know. Anyways, all right. Well, I hope you guys are staying safe again. And as I always say, do what's necessary, and we'll get through it. It's just going to take a little bit of time. All right, talk to y'all later. All right, bye-bye.